My name is Mary Miller. I'm the director of the undergraduate experience for the College of Business, and I'm also a full-time professor here. I teach accounting and various other topics in finance as well. And I came to University of New Haven as a second career. I am a practicing CPA, and I worked in big companies for a long time, and decided it was time to do something different. So I started teaching in the state system, and then a position opened up at UNH about 20 years ago, and I've been here ever since. Well, as a practicing CPA, I worked for big firms, and it was a lot of travel, a real lot of travel. And my daughter had come along, and I really didn't want to do that much traveling anymore. So I said, well, I'll start my own practice, which I did in my hometown. And I needed to supplement it a little bit. And I had always wondered if I could take all the knowledge I had gained over decades of experience in business and give it away, just give that knowledge away to people. And the best way to do it is to teach it in a classroom. And the best part now is, because I still do practice as a CPA, I do have my own practice. I can bring all that current information, all that experience into the classroom, and my students benefit by it. So it's been quite a road. My educational background, I am a UNH grad. I'm not going to tell you how long ago, because it's like shortly after the dinosaurs walked the earth, I went to college at University of New Haven. But I got a great education. I passed the CPA exam on the first try, and I attribute that to the education I got at University of New Haven. So I continued on to get an MBA, which was really good. And so after that, I just launched into my professional career. It's funny because my daughter, who I often quote in my classes, when she was 18, she goes, "Ma, really? You really expect me to know what I want to do when I'm 18 years old?" So I have no expectation there. The idea here is you start in something you think you're interested in. And if you find it not interesting, then you should maybe do some of the assessments that career development has to see what you're good at. I tell students, who are you? Do a self-assessment. Just write down 10 things about yourself. Maybe you're a people person. Maybe you're not a people person. Maybe you find math really easy. Maybe you find math really hard. Maybe you're an excellent writer. Maybe not so much. You start to take like a personal inventory of yourself, and then start to work and look and say, well, gosh, what's going to really play to my strengths? What's going to match who I am? And so a lot of times when I have students in the business school who decide they don't want to be in business, we'll sit down and we'll just do that exercise and start them thinking about what other things they might be good at or interested in, or both. Um, I often, especially if I'm teaching freshmen, first semester freshmen, which I usually do in accounting, I'll start off by saying, listen, if you have an assignment to read 20 pages, and 5 pages in, your mind is wandering, that's not effective reading. So go visit the people at the Student Success Center and make an appointment to get some guidance on how to read the book, because many books in business are technical. All right. And not everybody can read a technical book. It's not like reading, a story or fiction. So, but there are techniques to use and ways you can take notes when you're reading that will hold you in good stead. So, I just start out briefly talking about just if you have to read the textbook. My second piece is keep up with the work. When you set out your weekly schedule, schedule all your classes, and then on each day, block out time to do homework as if it's a class, and just don't wait for homework to get assigned and then say, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time to do it. block out chunks of time to do homework on every class and schedule it just as if you were going to a job. And at least at that point, you'll have the time to do the work. So then you say, well, okay, I have the time to do it, but I'm really struggling. And that's when we need to see the peer counselors and the peer tutors, you know, talk to your professor that you're going to need extra help. There is help available everywhere. And many of the students, for instance, I teach a really hard topic, which is the introduction to accounting. And it's not for everybody, but it's required for all business students. And a lot of my kids struggle. They really do. And I say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay, but you're going to have to kind of like fight through it. But there's lots of help. And for instance, in accounting, every single faculty member can tutor a student in what I'm teaching because it's intro. And we also have peer tutors too. So my advice is, you know, check on, can you read the book? And if you're, you know, if it's, let's say economics, I'll pick on economics, you know, and you're kind of dozing off after the third page, you're missing a technique and you need something to help you read that book. Don't just ignore it and go get the help. And they'll teach you how to read that book and make some notes. It's a lot easier and they know how, all sorts of ways for you to be able to do this. I'm going to be honest, I am only good at one thing, and that's accounting. I really wasn't good at much else, although I started out as a computer science major, systems analyst. So I know I'm half nerd, half accountant, but I can't write to save my life. I am a terrible writer. I don't much like English. I am not into literature. I could care less about Shakespeare, although I had to study it. So I was never good at that at all. History, no. English, no. So in order to get through those courses, because they're required, they were then, they are now, I would have to develop little rewards for myself. You know, part of what I did was I would take an assignment and break it up into 3 pieces because I just couldn't, I hated it so much, I just couldn't do the whole thing. So I do a third and I put it in my schedule. I do like a third of it or a half of it or a quarter of it. I'd reward myself with something. I'd go take a walk. I'd get something to eat. I'd watch my favorite TV show. And then in little chunks, I could tackle these things. But in one big chunk, it was just, I'd throw up my hands and say, I don't want to do this. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. And then if I broke it up into little pieces, it was a lot easier to manage. And sometimes I would break it up over a couple of days. That's the other thing. Doing a lot of it in one sitting was just, I just couldn't, like I couldn't do it. Especially history, you know, where I'd have to read like 50 pages and then actually remember something. You got to be kidding. So I would put it in 10-page chunks and take notes. And, you know, I had a whole little strategy to be able to do that. That's a tough one. Obviously, you should withdraw if you don't have a good grade, but I think that you need to understand why you don't have a good grade. And I think a student has to own it. Now, sometimes, you know, they have to withdraw because, you know, something's happened. Maybe they were sick with the flu for a couple of weeks and they missed so much, they can't catch up in all 5 subjects. So they have to sacrifice for one. And okay, that's fine. But there are just as many students who have kind of just not done the work at all most of the semester. And then try to make up all the tests and quizzes and work towards the end and can't do it and then have to withdraw. So when a student comes to me and says, I really think I need to withdraw from a class, I have a discussion with them because if it's their fault that they haven't done the work, they need to own it and they need to learn from it because 9 times out of 10, they have to take that course again. And, you know, you got to know what you're doing. Now, that being said, sometimes, and I will talk about my accounting course that all business students have to take. Sometimes that first course, they don't get it the first time. And it's not for lack of work. It's just it takes twice taking the course to understand it. So there are, you know, technical or like the science with a lab. If you're not good at science, you might have to withdraw and take the course over again because it's going to take you twice to do it. But that's a part of knowing yourself, you know, taking that personal inventory. What are you good at and not good at? But for every student who, you know, even thinks about withdrawing, the first words out of my mouth is to describe to me why, tell me what's going on, and, you know, let's have a discussion. One of the things that I think is most daunting, especially with new students or students who are struggling academically, it's usually a combination of lots of things. It's a combination of they need better skill sets, maybe they need some time management help. But it's also, you know, what courses are you taking when? You know, if you're not a morning person and you're not a student athlete, you can take afternoon and evening classes. Taking an 8 o'clock class when you're not a morning person is not a recipe for success. Eventually, when you're a senior and you have no choice when to take classes, you should be old enough and used to this enough you could do it. But starting out, maybe freshman, sophomore year, what's your personal schedule like? I mean, I can tell you that, you know, my grandnephew, he literally is at his best from 2 in the afternoon to 8 o'clock at night. And that's his time. And so that's when we schedule classes for him. So, you know yourself and try to fit a schedule that's going to work with who you are and what you can do.